Kia ora, g'day, welcome back once again, here with the fifth, and I think it's the final part of the Tucker Carlson Network 9/11 files, episode 5. So let's jump back in.
The 9/11 Commission failed to fulfill the single task it was charged with, explaining how 9/11 happened and why. Instead, it lied. But the 9/11 Commission did achieve another goal.
Bush is winning, baby!
It protected the Bush administration, which went on to win a resounding re-election victory in the 2004 elections. It also provided a basis to radically transform our country and our way of life in the United States. The final 70 pages of the 9/11 report detail a long list of recommended reforms. Those so-called reforms radically expanded the power of the very same agencies that failed to protect the United States from the terror attacks.
With my signature, this law will give intelligence and law enforcement officials important new tools to fight.
It's interesting, from the previous episodes, I can't remember which one, but the seemingly apparent fact that the CIA knew about these people, I think maybe to a degree FBI knew about it, I'm not sure, can't remember, there was a disconnect there somewhere anyway. And that they had the tools, the methods, the means already, the ability, they were monitoring them, they were assisting them to get in and out by stamping their visas, giving them visas to multiple entry visa into the US. And even with all of that, now they're being given more tools, resources, powers, whatever that might be, in regards to being able to have greater access to, seems like everybody. Pretty crazy.
A present danger.
Some of those changes, like the Patriot Act, passed before the Commission even issued its report.
We did not need new laws to allow wiretapping and surveillance because in all of the channels for the FBI, CIA, NSA, DIA, we had every bit of information we needed to stop the terrorists.
Kristen Breitweiser is a lawyer.
That's what I was just saying. Well, she just said it better than what I was trying to say. Like, it seems like they already had the information. Nobody acted on it, and people didn't want to share information for some reason about known terrorists.
She's also a 9/11 widow who has spent decades pushing for accountability for what happened on 9/11.
The attacks 100% should have been prevented, could have been prevented. The U.S. government had everything it needed to stop the attacks.
And yet, rather than blame the agencies for their obvious failures, Congress gave the deep state power to access your business records, including your library and bookstore records, with minimal to no judicial oversight, as if you did something wrong. Congress permitted roving wiretaps of multiple phones without specifying a specific target. Congress authorized unconstitutional searches of homes and businesses without any notification at all. Congress created something called national security letters, which enabled the FBI to get personal records without any court's approval, and also gave the FBI power to issue gag orders so you couldn't tell anyone they were doing this.
We were already wiretapping and doing surveillance just fine before the Patriot Act. So again, the attacks could have been prevented 100%. We had all the information we needed to stop the attacks. We had the hijackers fully identified. We knew exactly where they were going, and we knew what they were up to. We knew that the Patriot Act, FISA warrants, they're not needed because we already had all the information we needed before 9/11 to stop the attacks.
Well, again, just reiterating what I was trying to say but didn't say very well. It's crazy, man, that this stuff can happen. They've implemented these additional powers, which seems like they didn't need them in the first place, or not in the first place. It seems like they didn't need those additional powers because they already had the information. Another part that gets me is around, again, I've mentioned, I brought the narrative hook, line, and sinker with regards to what we were being told had happened. And I just look at this now, 20 odd years later, and just think to myself, wow. I wonder what I would have done back then had I known all of this information. Yeah, I'd like to think I'd be in a place where I'm at now in terms of as I look at this and I just think, man, there are some evil people out there that have been a part of covering what seems to be a massive cover-up in regards to this 9/11.
In 2007, the National Security Agency created the PRISM program that conducted warrantless surveillance of your phone calls, your emails, and your internet activity. Much of this surveillance was conducted on American citizens who'd done nothing wrong.
My name is John Kiriakou, Kiriakou. I'm a former CIA counterterrorism officer.
I'm glad he said it, John Kiriakou. I've always wondered how to say this guy's name. I've seen him pop up from time to time. Kiriakou. All right, John Kiriakou.
Former chief of counterintelligence in Alex Station, and I was in CIA Counterterrorism Center on 9/11. Within hours of the attacks, in retrospect, it's much more clear. The CIA changed from an intelligence service who saw its job as recruiting spies to steal secrets and then to analyze those secrets so policymakers could make the best informed policy, to a paramilitary organization whose job it was to capture and or kill anybody who could pose a threat to the United States. I went to Pakistan as the chief of CIA counterterrorism operations in January of 2002, and I was given no specific orders. So on my very first day in Pakistan, I went to see the station chief and I said, "What do you want me to do?" And he said, "I want you to come up with a plan to take down a terrorist safe house." I went back to my desk with a legal pad and thought to myself, all right, what would I do to take down a terrorist safe house? And
it's a very, I'm just listening to that, very cool set of broad orders to go away and come up with a plan to take down a terrorist safe house. Sweet. Okay. He's gonna need some kit, I would imagine, and some resources, some people.
I wrote at the top of the page 0200 because I would want it to be dark. And then I thought, well, 9/11 is still an open criminal investigation, so I'd have to invite the FBI along, and I would have to invite the Pakistani intelligence service because, after all, it's their country. I figured I would need battering rams, guns, ammunition, walkie-talkies, a satellite dish, encrypted communications, all different sorts of things, which I ordered on my CIA credit card. It arrived just days later in Pakistan. But the idea was we take the battering ram, we break down the door, and we grab everybody inside and then lock them up in whatever local jail happened to be the nearest. And so that's what we started to do. In our first operation, we found 2 Tunisian teenagers, both 18 or 19 years old. They both burst into tears. One asked if he could call his mother. And it was almost disarming. It was shocking that this was the fearsome Al-Qaeda that we were so afraid of. And then we started doing more of these, from 1 a week to 2 a week to 3 a week. Sometimes we would do 2 in a night. And we started capturing more and more important people, members of Egyptian Islamic Jihad, for example, members of Uzbek extremist groups. And so we would just take them to the Rawalpindi jail in the nearby city of Rawalpindi.
Man, it's interesting. I know this. I haven't seen this John Kiriakou's interviews. I haven't seen his interview, I think, on the Sean Ryan Show or other podcasts. But I've seen little short snippets and stuff where he's spoken about things. And clearly he's able to talk about a whole bunch of stuff, I assume, with regards to his, or he just doesn't care and he wants to get the information that he's been sitting on for however long. But interesting character with regards to his retelling of things that they were doing during his time at the agency, or in the CIA anyway. It's cool.
We got to the point where we actually filled the Rawalpindi jail. There was just no room to squeeze one more Al-Qaeda fighter in it. And so my Pakistani counterpart came to me and said, look, the jail's full. You have to get these guys out. I didn't know what to do with them. So I called CIA headquarters. I said, the Pacs want these Al-Qaeda guys out. What do I do with them? And I was told to put them on a transport plane and send them to Guantanamo. I said, Guantanamo, Cuba? Why would we send them to Cuba? And my colleague in Washington said, well, we've come up with a plan.
The plan was to detain hundreds of people, including U.S. citizens, without formal charges or any trial.
This was a multi-pronged plan to detain prisoners indefinitely, to carry out torture on some of them, which at the time were called enhanced interrogation techniques. And
always a way to get around it, eh? Just a matter of wordplay. Enhanced interrogation techniques. What does that mean? It means they're enhanced. We enhance the questions. Far out. I shouldn't laugh. Wouldn't be funny in terms of what they're going through. Some of them, I don't know, maybe innocent. Some of them, maybe all of them, maybe all guilty. I don't know. But either way, the supposed non-use of torture doesn't sound like that's the case listening to this guy anyway. Whether or not he was there and witnessed it or saw it happening, maybe he'll talk about it.
And to either render or extraordinarily render others.
Things are changing here in America, too. The 9/11 Commission recommended creating a new super spy called the Director of National Intelligence and placing that person inside the White House. They insisted on expanding the TSA, which now degrades millions of innocent air travelers with full body scans, pat-downs, luggage screenings, and multiple unconstitutional searches every time they enter an airport. The explanation for these changes was
I went through all of that screening in 2008, February 2008, when I went to Utah to go to Jim Jones, participate in a seminar, and then spend a month there training at the time Mark Twight's training facility, which was an invitation-only training facility that I'd come across. And got the full screening. I'd filled out the declaration forms that I'd travelled in from Iraq and stuff. So I sort of half expected to be getting all the checks and stuff done at that time. Going from bloody hot in Iraq to I don't know if it's the middle of winter, but freezing cold snow in Utah probably wasn't my best planning with regards to heading to the States for that particular seminar at that time, but it was good though.
that they would keep America safe. But most of the intelligence that was gathered from detainees was obtained through illegal torture, justified by a 2002 DOJ torture memo, which greenlit the use of waterboarding, stress positions, sleep deprivation, and small space confinement for interrogations.
Think of it this way. In 1946, we executed Japanese soldiers who had waterboarded American prisoners of war, right? Waterboarding was a death penalty crime. In January of 1968, the Washington Post ran a front page photograph of an American soldier waterboarding a North Vietnamese prisoner. On the morning that that picture was published, the Secretary of Defense, Robert S. McNamara, ordered an investigation. The soldier was arrested. He was charged with torture, he was convicted, and sentenced to 20 years at hard labor at Fort Leavenworth. The law never changed, but somehow in 2002, like magic, the George W. Bush administration's attorneys at the Justice Department, the CIA, and the National Security Council decided we didn't have to pay any attention to that law, and because we were the good guys, we could do anything we wanted. And that's how the torture program came to be.
The CIA set up secret black sites to conduct torture.
With all the information that this guy, John Kiriaku's providing, I wonder if they ask him how he felt about it during his time. I assume he served in the CIA for many, many years and clearly was privy to the information and the goings-ons of what they were doing in these different places. I wonder, I don't know, maybe he just couldn't or whatever. Oh, anyway, black sites. Let's have a look.
Around the world. There were sites in Afghanistan, Poland, Romania, Thailand, and many other countries.
Many of these places were so secret that the presidents and prime ministers of the countries that they were in had no idea that there was a secret CIA prison in their country. These were handshake deals between George Tenet, the director of the CIA, and whoever happened to be director of the intelligence service in those countries.
Actually, I think, sorry to pause it again so soon. I think, I don't know what he was going through, but maybe the thought process of those that are in there that are aware of all this stuff going on, maybe like me at the time, they're buying everything hook, line, and sinker, and feeling like you're making a difference, feeling like you're contributing to trying to rid the world of these evil people. And that's that's a powerful tool and resource to have at your disposal when you've got people that are committed to a cause, that believe that what you're doing is right. And so maybe that's what this guy was thinking and his colleagues, and maybe it's just been on hindsight, post 9/11, post everything that's been going on, that maybe has caused him to rethink his position and come out so openly as he is with regards to what he knows, or what he says he knows was going on.
The reason why there were so many of them was not because we had so many prisoners that we needed multiple locations. It's that word was bound to leak out that these places existed. And so if word leaked out about prison A, well, by then all the prisoners had been moved to prison B.
Most of what we know about the Al-Qaeda plans for 9/11 was obtained through torture.
The part of the commission's report that talks about the plot, the actual story of how the hijackers met, how the plan was devised, comes from quote unquote questioning of Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and Ramzi bin al-Sheikh, who were two detainees that were in custody. It was based on torture. Anyone who knows anything about torture knows that any information gleaned through torture is not reliable. It's not credible.
The CIA knew full well that the information it was gathering wasn't credible. Detainees made false confessions under pressure. Those detainees included 9/11 mastermind Khalid Sheikh Mohammed.
Khalid Sheikh Mohammed is probably the best example here. He confessed to, for example, murdering Daniel Pearl. Daniel Pearl was a Wall Street Journal reporter who came to Pakistan in early 2002. He was there to meet with a Pakistani extremist with whom he had been emailing for about 6 months. He went on to do the interview, and months later, his head was found in a vacant lot. His torso was found on the other side of town. Well, we know who killed Daniel Pearl. He was arrested. He confessed. He pointed the Pakistani authorities to Daniel Pearl's torso, and he was sentenced to life in prison. But Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, during torture at the hands of CIA officers, also confessed to killing Daniel Pearl. We knew he didn't kill Daniel Pearl, but the torture was so severe, he was telling his CIA interrogators, anything that he thought they wanted to hear just to get them to stop torturing him.
I mean, I understand the logic around, getting things under torture, not valid, all that sort of stuff. But unless, like the example that this guy, ex-CIA, Kiriakou, is giving, in this guy's case, unless he's been asked specific questions, this is just where my head's going. Was he asked specific questions about, I forget the name of the guy that was found with his head missing and the head in one place and the torso in another? If he has been asked questions specifically about that guy, I could potentially understand, maybe the torture is part of the reason. But if the line of questioning was around 9/11, which it sounds like it was, just in this piece that's been put together, then it seems real random to go bringing up some other person's name, unless that person was heavily involved in trying to research 9/11. Maybe they were. I probably missed it. Maybe I wasn't paying attention. But it just seems random to all of a sudden go, oh, and by the way, I killed this guy as well. Maybe he was, maybe he was a part of it. Maybe he didn't physically do the physical action, but maybe he was a part of the group that, I don't know, that murdered that person and took his head off and moved his body somewhere. Maybe he was part of the crew that took the torso and dropped it off. So therefore, had a part to play in the overall murder of this person. But yeah, strange anyway. Yeah.
What was true and what wasn't true? We'll never know the answer to that question. But remarkably, many details of the CIA's torture program are still not publicly acknowledged. They're still secret.
Waterboarding has received the most media attention. It's actually quite simple. You strap a prisoner to a board. His feet and legs are elevated compared to his face. Cloth or burlap or something is put in his mouth to keep him from drowning. And while his head is immobilized, water is poured on his mouth. So of course, water is going to get through the cloth and get down your throat, and it makes you feel like you're drowning. It causes panic. You tense your muscles to the point where it becomes painful. And in the case of one prisoner, Abu Zubaydah, Zain al-Abidin Muhammad Hussein, he actually did drown. His heart stopped beating, and he had to be revived by a CIA doctor performing CPR so that he could be tortured more. I never thought waterboarding was the worst technique. I thought that there were others that were worse. Now, the easiest technique was called the attack.
I could only imagine there'd be plenty of worse torture techniques. Not and probably a bunch in here. I don't know what he's going to talk about, but probably a bunch that we may never hear about.
Tension grasp. You grab somebody by the shirt and say, "Answer my questions." That's not torture. The second one was a slap on the belly called the belly slap. It makes a cracking sound. It's a little bit humiliating. It leaves a handprint. It's probably not torture. The third one was a slap across the face. That's humiliating, but again, reasonable people can agree to disagree about whether it's torture. But then they got progressively worse. The next one was called walling, where you roll a towel and put the towel around the prisoner's neck, and then you slam him repeatedly into a plywood wall. The plywood has a little bit of give, and the towel ensures that the prisoner doesn't get whiplash. But the CIA never used a towel, and the wall was made out of concrete block. And so they did such damage to prisoners that several of them have permanent traumatic brain injury and are unable to participate in their own defenses. The Justice Department never said you could smash somebody's head against a concrete wall until his brain was jelly, but that's exactly what the CIA did. There were...
Wow, this guy's going all in terms of the types of techniques used. So again, I'm wondering if he was there, was he present, did he witness all of this stuff, or is this based on what he's been told by colleagues or friends, or maybe video footage that he's seen of it? I assume they were probably recorded.
Others that were even worse. One was called the cold cell, where a prisoner is stripped naked. He's chained to an eye bolt in the ceiling, so he can't get comfortable. He can't sit or kneel or lay. He's standing 24 hours a day. The cell is chilled to 50 degrees Fahrenheit, and then every hour a CIA officer goes into the cell and throws a bucket of ice water on him. Now, we murdered prisoners using that technique. And again, the Justice Department never said, feel free to just murder these people by freezing them to death and giving them hypothermia. That's exactly what the CIA did. There was another one that was actually quite controversial, and that was sleep deprivation.
In the now unclassified legal memo in which Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld signed off on counter-resistance techniques at Gitmo in interrogations, Rumsfeld responded to the sleep deprivation technique by saying, "I stand at my desk for 8 to 10 hours a day. Why is standing limited for 4 hours?"
Donald, did they say Donald Rumsfeld? I stand at my desk for 8 to 10 hours a day. First, I doubt it. Oh my goodness. Anyway, there's lots going through my head. Pointless babbling on about that bloody muppet anyway.
But the CIA wasn't talking about keeping people awake at their stand-up desks for 24 hours. What they would do to these prisoners is, again, strip them naked, chain them to an eye bolt in the ceiling with industrial strength lights on them 24 hours a day, and death metal blasting at a volume of 11 24 hours a day. They went crazy after a few days of that and then just began to die.
Publicly, the Bush administration pretended none of this was happening. They lied.
This government does not torture people.
I said to my wife, who was also a senior CIA officer, he is a bald-faced liar. He is looking the American people directly in the eye, and he's lying to them. In October of 2001, a CIA officer, and it's still unclear after all those years who that person was, introduced two outside psychologists, James Mitchell and Bruce Jessen, to the director of the CIA.
I'm just like, this guy, John Kiriakou, he's got massive amount of airtime on this series anyway, this documentary. Clearly he knows a lot, or claims to know a lot, or maybe not claims, he's divulging a lot based on what he's I haven't heard him say that he's witnessed these, or that he was observing, or that he was watching these things take place. So interested to know if he does say that as we go along, that he was there, that he witnessed it, that he saw the techniques being used to interrogate these individuals.
And they pitched to him over this dinner their idea of enhanced interrogation techniques. They wrote this up as a memo that was referred to the CIA's covert action staff. The covert action staff approved it and sent it to the CIA General Counsel's office. The General Counsel liked the idea and sent it to the Office of Legal Counsel at the Justice Department. They approved it despite the fact that torture was specifically outlawed from 1945. They approved it and sent it to the National Security Council General Counsel. After his signature, it went to National Security Advisor Condoleezza Rice. And after Rice approved it, it went to the president. And as soon as the president signed it, the CIA began torturing its prisoners.
At its peak, Guantanamo Bay held 780 detainees.
Now, I remember at the time thinking, you know, these guys have been in Guantanamo for a long time, and we're not hearing anything about trials or jury selection or federal charges or anything. And a colleague said to me, oh, the vice president nixed that. It was Vice President Dick Cheney who decided or realized or concluded that while at Guantanamo, these men had no rights.
To this day, almost none of them has been charged with a crime. The vast majority of them are innocent.
Upwards of 80 or 85% of the people that we
I don't know how they know the vast majority of them are innocent. I don't know what that's based on, but anyway, maybe it comes out.
had at Guantanamo were innocent people who were scooped up in these dragnets. Most of them were Afghan citizens or Pakistani citizens who were involved in disputes with neighbors. Maybe they had loaned money to a neighbor and the neighbor didn't want to pay it back. So,
Okay. Yeah, maybe that's part of it too. I have heard of situations like that. I mean, I don't dispute that there probably are a number of people that are innocent of anything to do with terrorism. But yeah, be interesting to know what they're basing that on. And yeah, hearing that, yeah, there may have been some disgruntled people that didn't like somebody and made up a story to US forces, and then they get snatched and grabbed and taken in and then clearly held indefinitely.
he would call the Americans and say, hey, my neighbor is Al-Qaeda. The U.S. Army or the CIA grabs the guy, puts him on a flight to Guantanamo, and nobody ever sees him again.
On December 10th, 2007, John Kiriakou became a whistleblower. He told ABC News,
Oh, jeez. He's a bit plumper there, eh? Chunkier?
about the torture policies.
In an interview with the ABC News, I said that the CIA was torturing its prisoners, that torture was official U.S. government policy. It was not the result of a rogue, and that the policy had been personally approved by the president.
The government responded immediately with viciousness and ferocity. They treated Kiriakou much tougher than the Clinton administration had ever treated Osama bin Laden.
Within 24 hours, the CIA filed a document with the FBI called a crimes report, saying that I had disclosed classified information to the media. That's a crime under the Espionage Act. The FBI investigated me from December of 2007 until December of 2008. And in December of 2008, they sent my attorneys something called a declination letter, declining to prosecute me. They said that torture was a crime and that we have a law in the United States that says you cannot classify a crime for the purpose of keeping the information from the American people. And so I was not charged with a crime. 3 weeks later, Barack Obama became president, and he named John Brennan Deputy National Security Advisor for Counterterrorism. John Brennan was one of the godfathers of the CIA's torture program. And he sent a memo to Eric Holder, saying, charge him with espionage. Eric Holder wrote back and said, my people don't think he committed espionage. And Brennan wrote back again to Holder saying, charge him anyway and make him defend himself.
Where are those letters? Like, if that's what's happened, where are those comms? Maybe they're going to show up.
I had no idea that my phones were tapped, that my emails were being intercepted, or that teams of FBI agents were following me everywhere I went for the next 3 years. And finally, in January of 2012...
That seems strange. You're a former CIA, and for the next 3 years, that's a pretty specific number. Maybe something come out later, or maybe is told we've been following you for the last 3 years. I would have thought he might have had suspicions that he'd be under surveillance, given what he's spoken about and the investigation that took place for a year. Yeah, anyway.
I was arrested by the FBI and charged with 5 felonies, including 3 counts of espionage, which in many cases is a death penalty charge.
In the end, Kirikou was the only person at CIA to go to prison for anything related to 9/11.
Wow. Sorry to cut off the host and to pause it again. Well, that makes sense now after hearing that, in terms of why he's so open with all the information that he's giving anyway. I wonder if he ended up doing
crime, telling the truth about what the CIA was doing. In fact, despite the CIA's previously unknown role in recruiting the hijackers and their relentless stonewalling to the 9/11 Commission, the CIA was, on net, maybe the biggest winner from 9/11.
In a perverse way, 9/11 is one of the best things that ever happened to the CIA for a number of reasons.
In the immediate aftermath of 9/11, CIA Director Tenet offered a novel approach to taking out the Taliban. Just use the CIA. And it worked. The CIA was the first U.S. agency to deploy to Afghanistan that year. A paramilitary team called Jawbreaker arrived in Afghanistan on September 26, 2001.
The first handful of teams that were sent to Afghanistan were sent there specifically to liaise with the Northern Alliance, to push the Taliban out of power, and to capture or kill every al-Qaeda fighter they could encounter. That extended then to Pakistan by the end of the year 2001.
The context here is important. After the end of the Cold War, it wasn't exactly clear what the CIA would do. They'd spent 40 years fighting the Soviets. What next?
In the mid-90s, President Bill Clinton, who was really no fan of the CIA, cut the CIA's budget. And that was the first time that the CIA had had a budget cut since the Carter administration in the late 1970s. On the day after 9/11, the CIA got a budget supplement of 10 figures. The amount is still classified, but I actually went up to the counterterrorism center chief, Kofor Black at the time. This was about 5-6 days after 9/11. And I said, Kofor, I have an idea for an operation that I want to put past you. And he put up his hands and he said, whatever it is, just do it. I have so much money, I can't possibly spend it all. So we all began flying business class all over the world. There are famous stories of CIA officers throwing sacks of money out of the side of helicopters, which gave rise to a joke at the agency that you can't buy an Afghan warlord, but you can certainly rent one. And that's what we were doing.
The CIA provided millions of dollars in direct cash payment to anti-Taliban groups, along with weapons and communications support. By November 2001, it was the CIA's Special Activities Division, not the U.S. military, that had taken Kabul and the fortress called Mazar-e-Sharif. The CIA targeted bin Laden as early as December 2001. But as was so often the case during the tenure of George Tenet, the CIA failed to capture bin Laden. Tenet became CIA director in 1997, just as bin Laden was issuing his first fatwa against the United States. A leader with integrity would have resigned in shame after missing obvious warnings about a major attack. But Tenet had no shame. The additional resources and powers the CIA received did not lead to better outcomes.
It doesn't sound like he's the only one that's got no shame. Like everybody a part of that administration sounds like they've got no shame or no moral compass. It's yeah, crazy, man.
On March 20th, 2003, the U.S. invaded Iraq. It did so based on false intelligence that came from, yes, the CIA run by George Tenet.
The United States knows that Iraq has weapons of mass destruction.
It was all lies. But in Washington, failure is seen as success and rewarded. By 2015, the CIA's public budget had risen to $15 billion, 500% higher than it was in the mid-1990s when they were fighting for post-Cold War relevance. And by the way, that's simply the public budget. Much of CIA's funding remains classified. The FBI was also rewarded for failing to protect America. By 2023, the FBI's budget was almost $11 billion. That's up from $3.3 billion the year of the 9/11 attacks. But none of it made America safer.
Before 9/11, Silicon Valley had the highest concentration of millionaires anywhere in America. But post 9/11, Washington, D.C. has the highest concentration of millionaires anywhere in America. And it's because Congress put so many billions upon billions of dollars in counterterrorism and in intelligence, including in literally thousands of federal contractors called Beltway bandits, that everybody got rich.
After the attacks, the FBI radically shifted agent resources to its top priorities. Those were counterterrorism and counterintelligence and cybercrime. Traditional crime fighting took a back seat. The FBI's drug program has sustained by far the largest reduction in FBI agent workforce, about 550 positions, or more than 80% of the non-supervisory field agents who are permanently reprogrammed. Not surprisingly, this reduction in drug fighting aligned with the deadliest drug epidemic in American history. More than 1 million Americans died.
I am not only not a conspiracy theorist, I'm about as far away from being a conspiracy theorist as a person can be. But I'm also a realist, and I made the first half of my career at the CIA as an analyst. And to come to an analytic judgment, you have to look at the evidence. Well, the evidence surrounding 9/11 says that there is a far greater story there than we have been led to believe.
100% I agree with that, just based on the previous 4 episodes and even this 5th episode that I'm listening to and watching right now. It's mind-blowing, man. I don't know how other people feel about this, but as somebody that, gobbled up the narrative, I wasn't searching for it. I just accepted the narrative for what it was when it was being presented on the media, through news, and then going into Iraq in 2003. I enjoyed that experience and that opportunity to serve and to be with the guys, because I felt that we were going there for the right reasons, to try to hunt these weapons of mass destruction. I was just disappointed that we didn't find any. Then I thought maybe the Brits found some, maybe the American troops found some. Then I was even more disappointed to hear that nobody found any. That threw up question marks, but I still didn't go hunting and looking for information in and around 9/11 and was this all true, etc. And at that time I just thought, this is the way the world's going to go, because of what the terrorists did in 9/11 in America, on American soil. And maybe that's part of the reason why I was meant to throw my toys out of the cot on that bloody subject course for promotion that I didn't want to do. Because had I gone on that, I would have stayed in the unit. I would have kept serving. I would have felt like what we were doing was right. I would have felt like I was on the right side of what we were doing in those conflicts, in those countries. But yeah, everything happens for a reason. And I don't pretend to have the answers, but what I do know for myself is, listening to this, watching these episodes and seeing this last one, I am pretty disappointed with regards to what it is that I'm seeing and hearing, having a different perspective and being in a different stage of life to I guess, be willing and able to listen to this information a bit more objectively than what I probably would have chosen to do or chosen not to do had I still been serving in the military, and particularly in the unit at the time. Anyway.
Many of the people involved in this story should be in prison today, but of course they're not. That's the real story of 9/11. It's the story of winners and losers. On the day of the attacks, the losers were the 2,977 civilians who were murdered. It was the children who found out their parents weren't coming home. The New Yorkers who witnessed the smoke rising from their city. It was the firemen and cops who rushed into the towers to save those trapped inside and died. In the aftermath of the attack, the losers were the nearly 7,000 U.S. service members who were killed in Iraq and Afghanistan, and the 52,000 who were wounded in action there. The losers are the American people, the rest of us, who lived in a country permanently transformed, stripped of its fundamental constitutional rights. We're $7 trillion poor with nothing to show for it. Abroad, the losers were even more numerous. Nearly 5 million people were killed in the post-9/11 wars, most of them civilian. Entire countries were destroyed. The world was destabilized. And then there were the winners. In the immediate aftermath of the attacks, President George W. Bush enjoyed the highest approval ratings in the history of modern politics. He leveraged that popularity to launch a decade of regime change wars. In 2002, he defied the odds in the midterm elections and expanded his party's majority in the Congress. In 2004, he became the first Republican presidential candidate in decades to win re-election with a majority of the popular vote. When Bush arrived in office in 2000, he was worth about $20 million. Today, some estimates say he's worth more than $50 million. Bush lives in Texas today. He spends most of his time painting and riding his bike. National Security Advisor Condoleezza Rice, who spent most of 2001 ignoring the steady stream of very clear warnings about an imminent terror attack, got a promotion. In 2005, she became the Secretary of State. She received the overwhelming support from the United States Senate. Since then, Rice has enriched herself by serving on numerous corporate boards and is director of the Hoover Institution at Stanford University, where she is a professor. Disgraced CIA Director George Tenet, meanwhile, retired from the CIA in 2004, about a year after he provoked the invasion of Iraq. He got a sinecure as a professor at Georgetown University, not surprisingly. He authored multiple books and, as so many in the CIA do, he joined the board of directors of multiple defense contractors. Tenet also spent more than a decade at an investment bank. After leaving the CIA, he was awarded a Presidential Medal of Freedom by George W. Bush. That's the nation's highest civilian honor. John Brennan, the Saudi station chief who helped the hijackers get their passports, blocked Alex Station from getting basic biographical details about Osama bin Laden, and personally worked to ensure that John Kiriakou ended up going to prison for telling the truth about what the CIA was doing, ended up running the CIA itself.
Well, so that John Kiriakou, I didn't hear that before. I think I was wondering if he went to prison. He managed to get him to go to prison. I wonder how much time he served in prison.
He was appointed by Barack Obama to be director. While running the CIA, Brennan was caught hacking the computers of the Senate Intelligence Committee. Brennan lied about that and never faced consequences for that lie. After leaving the CIA, he played a central role in the Russiagate hoax that dominated Donald Trump's first term. He obtained a sinecure at the University of Texas and became an MSNBC contributor. Cofer Black, who ran the Counterterrorism Center, left the public sector for a successful career as a defense contractor. In 2017, maybe inevitably, he joined Hunter Biden on the board of Burisma, the Ukrainian gas company. Paul Wolfowitz, the Pentagon official who began calling for an invasion of Iraq just hours after the 9/11 attacks, ended up getting the war he wanted. He also got a promotion. In 2005, Paul Wolfowitz became the president of the World Bank. He resigned 2 years later during a corruption scandal. In 2016, Paul Wolfowitz endorsed Hillary Clinton. And finally, there's Philip Zelikow, the man behind the Dishonest Commission report. After finishing his time as executive director of the commission, Zelikow got what he always wanted: more power. His good friend Condoleezza Rice rewarded him for the work he did on the commission. Zelikow became counselor of the State Department, where he acted as Rice's deputy. He has since served on too many boards to mention. He's also served as an advisor to the Obama administration and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Zelikow is a professor at the University of Virginia, where he served as dean of the graduate school. His work on the commission masterfully avoided any form of accountability or blame for the attacks. It was, from beginning to end, a lie. In the end, Zelikow blamed the government's failures on a failure of imagination. Not surprisingly, imagination has never been indicted for it. It's been more than 20 years now, and we still don't know the simple truth about 9/11. But we can know. A new commission could find out, an honest commission, a nonpartisan commission, a commission dedicated to protecting the United States could find out. It could answer the questions that have hung in the air since that day. What role did John Brennan play in facilitating the attacks? Why did he seem to be working for the hijackers? What CIA official made the decision to attempt to recruit those hijackers? Why did the Bush administration ignore dozens of clear warning signs? Why did the Clinton administration repeatedly refuse to kill or capture Osama bin Laden? Who made the decision to ship the rubble from 9/11 off Manhattan and out of the country before an investigation could be done? Why did Tower 7 collapse even though it was hit by no airplane? What's in the NSA files that the commission never bothered to check? Which investors profited from the attacks? The government knows the name of the investor who profited from the attacks, who knew they were coming. Why haven't they told us? And in the end, who benefited most from 9/11? What foreign countries benefited from 9/11? What did foreign intel services know about the attacks before they happened? A commission could find these answers. That commission would have broad subpoena power, enough funding and personnel to get those answers. After more than 20 years, the American people have a right, an absolute right to those answers. They should be outraged by the lying, and they should demand to know what actually happened on September 11th.
Bloody here, mate. Fair enough too. Geez, I'm glad I got through that. Sorry, it's nearly 50 minutes. I didn't feel like stopping it. I just wanted to hear this fifth and final episode. I think I've done each one in one hit anyway. So, wow, there's a lot in there. So many more questions than answers. Anybody who watches this, in my opinion anyway, my uneducated opinion in terms of watching this, I think it's hard to look at this and think that there isn't more to the 9/11 tragedy than meets the eye. And when you start listening to it, all these questions at the end, great questions, different countries that knew, who was it that put in all those put options and that sort of stuff. I think that was in one of the other episodes. They know who the person is, but they haven't divulged the name. That 9/11 Commission report, which was a load of rubbish from that bloody Zellico, whatever his face is. Just the amount of promotions and rewards for people that failed in their jobs, all the information that was known beforehand. That guy Brennan, who's signing off and issuing these multiple entry visas into the US, knowing that they're getting aircraft lessons, knowing that there was chatter amongst them about hijacking an aircraft to fly into a building in the US. Those people that have been involved in this at the highest levels, I honestly don't know how they get through each day, but clearly they do. Maybe money just makes it that much easier for them to be able to go about their day and their lives, I guess. But anyway, man, I don't have anything else to add. Appreciate you, Mr. Tucker Carlson. Thank you for the 5 episodes and those that were involved. Oh, Mr. John Kiriakou. I don't know how long that guy went to prison. If anybody knows how long he went to prison for, feel free to drop it in the comments. Maybe I'll come across it later, but makes sense why he's quite happy to divulge all the information that he says that he knows. Again, I didn't hear him mention if he witnessed the torture and all those types of things taking place. I'm assuming he did, but yeah, I didn't hear him actually say that he witnessed that stuff. So maybe he hasn't witnessed it. Maybe he's just heard of it from other people that he served with. So anyway, if you made it this far, man, appreciate you. Be interesting to hear your thoughts of what you've thought about these 5 episodes in regards to the 9/11 Commission and the 9/11 files. And to hear what your take is. But just thanks for your time and support regardless. As always, man, the message is the same, mate. There's lots to take in here from me. I'm going to go away and digest that for me anyway. But the message is the same. Regardless of any challenges, difficulties, trials you may be going through, man, I just encourage you to keep turning up, keep staying in the fight, keep putting one foot in front of the other and take one day at a time. Know and trust that things can do and will get better if you want them to. You just have to want them to. And then work hard, stay consistent, be disciplined, and be patient. Things will come good. The sun will shine again. There is a light at the end of that tunnel. So as always, go always a little further. Remember, who dares wins and who cares wins. And until the next video, there's a big mana wave coming from me to you, filled with my aroha, respect, appreciation, and gratitude for you all.